He had been playing the piano since he was very young. The first time his small fingers touched the keys, it felt like magic to him. He spent hours every day practicing, and while others were playing outside or watching television, he was focused on mastering the music. His dedication was unmatched, and it showed in every performance. By the time he was a teenager, he was already performing in small concerts, amazing everyone who heard him. People would often say that he had a gift that was beyond normal. As he grew older, his talent only increased. He could play any piece he saw, often improvising and adding his own unique touch. Audiences were captivated by the way he could make the piano sing, not just play notes. Every time he performed, he could make the listeners feel emotions they didn't even know were there. Joy, sadness, excitement, and calm would all flow through his music like water through a river. It wasn't just skill. It was something deeper, something that connected him to people on a level words could not reach. He quickly became famous in his city, then in his country. Invitations arrived from concert halls in other countries, and soon he was traveling across the world to perform. People waited eagerly for his concerts, and tickets sold out within hours. Critics wrote glowing reviews, calling him a genius and the best pianist alive. Many of his fellow musicians admired him, though some admitted they also felt a small sting of jealousy at his incredible ability. Yet he never let fame change him. He loved music more than anything else, and the joy of performing was always his main goal. He had a routine that kept him sharp. Each morning he would wake up early and practice for several hours. He focused not only on technique but also on feeling, the emotions behind the music. He wanted each note to carry meaning. Afternoons were often spent studying new compositions or improvising pieces of his own. Evenings were reserved for performances, either in front of a live audience or for recordings. Despite all his achievements, he felt there was always more to learn, more ways to grow, and he never stopped striving to improve. People around him noticed his confidence. On stage, he seemed untouchable. His hands flew across the keys with precision and elegance, and he never appeared nervous or unsure. He seemed to know instinctively where each note would go, how the music should flow. Friends would joke that he had a special connection with the piano, as if it were an extension of his own body. His talent made him proud, though he rarely boasted about it. He simply let his music speak for itself. Despite all his success, he was still human. There were times when he felt lonely, traveling alone from city to city, performing in grand halls filled with strangers. He missed having someone to share these moments with, someone who could understand the depth of his love for music. Yet he found comfort in the piano, in the act of creating music, and in the way his audience connected with him through it. Music was both his passion and his refuge, a place where he could express himself fully and honestly. One evening, after a particularly brilliant performance in a famous concert hall, he was met with thunderous applause. The audience clapped for what seemed like an eternity, and he felt a rush of happiness and pride. Backstage, reporters asked him about his inspiration, and fans lined up to get his autograph. He smiled politely, answered questions, and thanked everyone, but inside he felt a quiet restlessness. No matter how many people praised him, there was a part of him that longed for something more, something he couldn't yet define. After the show, he decided to take a walk. The city was alive with lights and sounds, and he felt the cool evening air on his face. It was a welcome break from the bright stage lights and the constant attention. He wandered through quiet streets, enjoying the stillness of the night. Eventually, he found himself near a small park he had never noticed before. There, under the soft glow of street lamps, was an old piano sitting in a small pavilion. It looked worn and abandoned, yet something about it drew him closer. He approached the piano, curiosity piqued. As he got nearer, he heard a soft melody being played. It was gentle, almost whisper-like, yet it carried a depth that immediately caught his attention. The notes were simple, but the feeling behind them was profound. He stopped and listened, mesmerized. Who could be playing such beautiful music at this late hour? He looked around, but there was no one in sight. The melody continued, and he felt an unexpected emotion rise within him, a mixture of awe and humility. It was unlike anything he had ever heard. He tried to play along, to match the notes with his own skill, but something was different. No matter how fast or precise he played, he could not capture the same feeling. The melody had a life of its own, a soul that went beyond technique or training. He realized for the first time that being technically perfect was not the same as creating music that could touch hearts in this way. It was a humbling moment, and for the first time he felt a deep respect for the unknown musician who had created this magical sound. As the melody ended, the player vanished. There was no sound, no movement, just the lingering feeling of the music in the air. He stood there stunned, unsure of what to do next. The experience stayed with him all night, replaying in his mind like a delicate echo. When he finally returned to his hotel, he couldn't sleep. The notes haunted him, not in a frightening way, but in a way that demanded attention. He realized that this mysterious music had opened a door to something new, something he had never explored in his own playing. The next morning, he returned to the park, hoping to find the musician again. He searched the pavilion, the paths, and even the surrounding streets, but there was no sign of anyone. The piano remained silent, waiting as if holding its secrets close. He tried to recreate the melody from memory, but each attempt felt hollow. It was then that he understood an important truth. Music was not just about skill, speed, or precision. It was about connection, emotion, and the power to move people in ways that words could not. This realization began to change him. He became more aware of the feelings behind each piece he played, listening more deeply to the subtleties of sound. He experimented with softer notes, longer pauses, and more expressive phrasing. Audiences began to notice a difference in his performances. There was now a new depth in his music, a sense of vulnerability and emotion that had been missing before. People felt something more, something they could not easily describe, but it touched them profoundly. Despite his fame, he remained humble. The experience in the park reminded him that there was always more to learn, always someone or something that could inspire him in ways he never imagined. He started to practice not just to perfect his technique, but to explore the emotional possibilities of music. He wanted every performance to be meaningful, to convey something real and genuine. This approach made him more passionate and more connected to his art than ever before. Friends and colleagues noticed the change. Some were curious about what had inspired this new approach, while others admired the quiet confidence he now carried. He didn't speak much about the mysterious musician or the melody that had touched him, keeping the experience as a private treasure. Yet it influenced everything he did, shaping his performances, his compositions, and his outlook on life. The encounter had given him a new perspective, one that valued emotion and connection above all else. Even as he traveled the world, performing in grand halls and meeting countless people, he never forgot that night in the park. It became a guiding memory, a reminder that talent alone was not enough. True mastery required openness, humility, and the willingness to be moved by something beyond oneself. He understood now that no matter how skilled he became, there was always room to grow, always new ways to experience music and life, and so he continued to play, not just to show the world what he could do, but to share something deeper, something that could touch hearts and change the way people felt. He had reached the pinnacle of talent, yet he knew the journey was far from over. The mysterious melody had humbled him, challenged him, and inspired him to become more than just a skilled pianist. It had helped him become a true artist, one who played with soul, heart, and genuine human feeling. After that night in the park, he could not get the melody out of his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the soft, haunting notes drifting through the air. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that he wanted to understand it, to feel it, to somehow capture the same beauty and emotion in his own playing. It was not just curiosity. It was as if the melody had touched a part of his soul that he had never noticed before, a part that longed for something deeper than technical skill. He began visiting the park more frequently, hoping to encounter the mysterious musician again. Each time he arrived with anticipation, scanning the pavilion and listening for the faint sound of piano keys. Days passed, then weeks. Sometimes he would see other people in the park, walking dogs or jogging, but there was never a sign of the musician. He tried to stay patient, but the longing to hear the melody again grew stronger with every visit. During the day, he practiced as usual, but now his focus had changed. He tried to capture the feeling of the melody rather than just the notes. He experimented with soft, flowing sounds and unusual pauses. Sometimes it felt like he was reaching for something he could never fully grasp. His friends and colleagues noticed a new intensity in his playing. He seemed more thoughtful, more deliberate, and more emotional. Each performance became less about showing his skill and more about expressing something deep and meaningful. Despite his dedication, there were moments of frustration. No matter how hard he tried, he could not replicate the magic of the melody. He felt a sense of humility that he had never experienced before. All his fame, all his skill, and all his years of practice could not prepare him for this challenge. It was a strange mixture of awe and vulnerability, and it made him feel both small and alive at the same time. He realized that music had an infinite depth, far beyond technical ability, and that true mastery involved more than just playing the right notes. One evening, as the sun was setting, he sat by the piano in the park, letting his fingers hover over the keys. The air was warm and the city's sounds felt distant. He closed his eyes and tried to remember every detail of the melody, the softness of the notes, the pauses, the way the music seemed to breathe. He played slowly, letting the music guide him rather than forcing it. For the first time, he felt a glimmer of connection, a fleeting touch of the emotion that had drawn him to the park in the first place. It was a small victory, but it filled him with hope. He began to keep a journal, writing down his thoughts, his feelings, and even the fragments of melodies that came to him. He realized that the journey to understand this music was teaching him as much about himself as it was about piano. He was learning patience, attentiveness, and humility. He discovered that sometimes the most profound experiences could not be forced or controlled. They arrived when one was ready to receive them, and they required openness and sensitivity. Word about his new approach to music began to spread. Those who attended his concerts noticed a change in his style. His performances had become more expressive, more vulnerable, and more emotionally rich. Audiences were moved in ways they could not describe. Some wept, some smiled, and some simply sat in quiet reflection. He realized that the mysterious melody had changed him, not by teaching him new technical skills, but by teaching him how to feel, how to connect, and how to share the depth of his own soul. Despite the growing appreciation from others, he never spoke openly about the melody or the mysterious musician. He wanted the experience to remain personal, a private treasure that inspired him from within. There was a sense of magic in the unknown, a sense that not everything could or should be explained. This mystery became a source of motivation, pushing him to explore new creative paths without revealing the source of his inspiration. He also began to notice the subtle beauty in everyday sounds. The rustling of leaves, the distant laughter of children, and the soft rhythm of raindrops all became part of his musical awareness. He realized that music was everywhere, waiting to be noticed and felt. He began incorporating these natural rhythms into his improvisations, letting the sounds of life blend with the piano in ways that felt organic and alive. It was as if the world itself had become an instrument, and he was learning to listen carefully. As he delved deeper, he also began teaching others. Not in the usual technical sense, but in a way that encouraged students to feel the music, to connect with it emotionally. He emphasized listening, sensitivity, and expression over mere speed or perfection. Some students struggled at first, but those who persevered discovered a new dimension in their own playing. Teaching became another way for him to honor the lesson of the mysterious melody, sharing its essence without revealing its source. Despite these fulfilling experiences, there were moments of doubt. He wondered if he would ever truly understand the melody or meet the musician who had played it. Sometimes he felt that he was chasing a shadow, a fleeting glimpse of something unreachable. Yet these moments were balanced by the joy of discovery, the thrill of experimenting, and the satisfaction of slowly uncovering layers of emotion and expression in his own music. One quiet evening, as he practiced alone in his apartment, he noticed a subtle shift in his playing. The notes flowed more naturally. The pauses felt meaningful, and the music seemed to breathe in a way it hadn't before. He smiled, realizing that he had absorbed a part of the melody's spirit. It was not an exact replication, but it carried the same depth, the same emotional resonance. He understood that the melody had been a guide, not a destination, teaching him to explore, feel, and express in a way that was uniquely his own. He decided to take a short trip to a nearby countryside, seeking inspiration from nature. He found a small, quiet cabin by a lake and brought his piano there. The peaceful surroundings allowed him to focus completely on the music, away from the distractions of the city. He played for hours, sometimes improvising, sometimes reflecting on fragments of the melody that haunted him. The calm environment helped him deepen his understanding, and he felt a stronger connection to the music than ever before. During his time in the countryside, he also began observing people in a new way. He noticed the subtle emotions in their expressions, the way they moved, and the little gestures that revealed their feelings. These observations influenced his music, allowing him to capture not just abstract emotions but the human experience itself. Each note became a story, each pause a reflection of life's subtleties. He realized that true artistry came from empathy and observation, from paying attention to the world and its people. Weeks later, when he returned to the city, he felt renewed. His performances had gained a depth that was evident to all who listened. Critics were amazed at the emotional growth in his playing, and audiences were captivated by the way he could make the piano speak directly to the heart. Yet he remained humble, remembering the lesson that had started it all, the power of the mysterious melody and the musician who had taught him, without words, the true meaning of music. He continued to visit the park, not out of obsession but out of gratitude. The pavilion where he had first heard the melody became a place of reflection, a reminder of the journey that had changed him. Even when the musician did not appear, he felt a quiet connection to the magic that had touched him that night. It was a source of inspiration, a symbol of the endless possibilities in music and in life. Over time, he also began composing his own pieces with a new perspective. The melodies he created were rich with emotion, complexity, and subtle beauty. He infused them with the lessons he had learned, the importance of listening, the power of feeling, and the magic of mystery. These compositions resonated deeply with audiences, often leaving them speechless, moved in ways they could not describe. His music had become more than performance. It had become a gift, a bridge between his soul and the hearts of others. Through this journey, he discovered something essential about life itself. True fulfillment did not come from recognition, fame, or technical skill alone. It came from connection, empathy, and the willingness to be transformed by experiences, even those that seemed small or fleeting. The mysterious melody had humbled him, but it had also elevated him, teaching him the value of sensitivity, patience, and openness. He knew that this lesson would stay with him forever, guiding him through every note, every performance, and every moment of his life, and so he continued to play, driven not by the desire to impress, but by the desire to explore, to feel, and to share the beauty he had discovered. Each day brought new challenges and new opportunities to grow, but he embraced them with humility and gratitude. The melody that had once seemed mysterious and unreachable had become a companion, a guide, and a source of endless inspiration, shaping him into not just a talented pianist but a true artist, fully aware of the depth and richness of the music and the life it reflected. Despite all his progress, he could not shake a feeling of longing. Every day, the memory of that night in the park and the mysterious melody tugged at him. It was as if a puzzle had been presented to him, a puzzle that could not be solved through skill or hard work alone. It demanded something more, a sensitivity, an intuition, and a depth of emotion that he had yet to fully understand. He felt restless knowing that the melody had shown him a world beyond his own technical brilliance. He decided to immerse himself even more fully in music. He spent hours playing, experimenting, and exploring the emotional layers of every piece he knew. He tried to listen to each note as if it were speaking directly to him. He focused on the pauses, the silences, and the subtle shifts in tone that he had once overlooked. Music became a conversation, a living language that he was learning to understand. With every practice session, he felt a growing awareness that true artistry went beyond applause and recognition. It was about touching something within the listener. His obsession with the melody began to affect his daily life. Friends and colleagues noticed a change in him. He was quieter, more thoughtful, and often lost in his own world. Sometimes he would sit for hours staring at the piano, letting his mind wander as he tried to connect with the memory of the music. He became deeply reflective, questioning not only his skills but also his understanding of what it meant to be a musician. He realized that his journey was no longer about being the best. It was about discovering the essence of music itself. He tried to recreate the melody countless times, writing down fragments, experimenting with different keys and rhythms, but nothing matched the depth of feeling he remembered. Each attempt was a lesson in humility. He began to understand that the melody was not just a sequence of notes. It was an experience, an expression of the musician's soul, something that could not be captured by mere technique. The more he tried, the more he felt that he had been challenged not to replicate the music, but to understand it, to internalize its message and let it transform him. As his fascination grew, he also began to study other forms of music. He listened to compositions from around the world, from different cultures and eras, seeking to understand the universal language of emotion in music. He explored jazz, classical, folk, and contemporary styles, always listening for the feelings behind the notes rather than just the patterns. He learned to identify the subtle ways a musician could convey joy, sorrow, longing, or hope with the slightest change in tempo, volume, or tone. Every discovery inspired him to experiment further with his own playing, blending new ideas with the lessons he had learned from the mysterious melody. He also began to reflect on his own life and experiences. The melody had stirred something deep within him, and he realized that music was not only a gift to be shared with others, but also a mirror of the self. He thought about the emotions he had suppressed, the moments of fear or doubt he had ignored, and the experiences that had shaped him. Playing the piano became a form of therapy, a way to process feelings that he could not otherwise express. Each note became a step in understanding himself, and the more he embraced this, the more his music gained a profound, authentic resonance. One evening he returned to the park, hoping once again to find the mysterious musician. The city was quiet and the park was bathed in the soft glow of lamplight. He sat at the piano, fingers hovering over the keys, and played slowly, trying to reach the emotion he remembered from that night. Hours passed and still there was no sign of anyone. Yet he felt a strange sense of peace. He realized that the journey was no longer just about finding the musician. It was about what the melody had awakened within him. The pursuit itself had become a teacher, guiding him toward a deeper understanding of music and life. In the following weeks, he experimented with composing new pieces inspired by the melody. He did not try to copy it. Instead, he allowed its spirit to influence him. He created music that reflected subtle emotions, small moments of life, and the quiet beauty of nature. He focused on storytelling through music, imagining the scenes, feelings, and experiences behind each note. His compositions began to have a narrative quality, telling stories without words, inviting listeners to feel and imagine. Audiences noticed the change immediately. There was a new depth, a new vulnerability, and a new honesty in his music that drew people in and held them captivated. Despite his progress, he still felt a longing to meet the musician. He wondered about her story, her experiences, and what had inspired her to create such a moving melody. He imagined her life, her thoughts, and her emotions, and he realized that this curiosity was a part of his growth. It taught him empathy, the ability to consider the experiences and perspectives of others, and the value of recognizing the contributions of unseen or unknown individuals in shaping our own journeys. The melody was more than music. It was a lesson in connection, humility, and human understanding. He also began sharing his discoveries with a few close friends and fellow musicians. Not the melody itself, but the ideas and feelings it had inspired. They would gather in small rooms, playing and experimenting together, exploring the emotional possibilities of music. These sessions became a source of inspiration, creativity, and joy. He realized that music was a collaborative experience, one that could grow richer when shared with others who were open to exploration. It was no longer just about performance. It was about experience, expression, and human connection. One day, while practicing at home, he experienced a sudden clarity. He realized that the melody had taught him not only about music, but about life. It was a reminder that the most profound experiences cannot be forced, that patience and openness are essential, and that the journey itself is often more valuable than the destination. He understood that his skill, while impressive, was only part of the equation. True artistry required sensitivity, empathy, and the courage to be vulnerable in one's expression. With this understanding, he began approaching his performances differently. He focused less on technical perfection and more on the story and feeling behind the music. Each concert became an opportunity to connect with the audience, to share a moment of emotion and humanity. He noticed that listeners responded more deeply than ever before, moved by the honesty and vulnerability in his playing. The mysterious melody had transformed not only his music, but also the way he related to others and to the world. He continued to explore new compositions, blending elements from the melody with his own experiences and imagination. Each piece was a reflection of his journey, a combination of skill, emotion, and insight gained from his encounter with the unknown musician. He discovered that this approach made his music more alive, more memorable, and more meaningful. Audiences could feel the authenticity, the depth, and the human story behind every note. It was no longer just entertainment. It was a shared experience, a connection between hearts and minds. As the months passed, he began to notice subtle changes in himself. He was more patient, more observant, and more reflective. He approached challenges with a calm determination, understanding that some lessons take time to unfold. He became more empathetic, appreciating the struggles and emotions of those around him. Music had become a way to explore not just sound but life itself, and he was grateful for the lesson that the mysterious melody had provided. He never stopped seeking the musician, though he knew that the encounter might never happen again. The possibility of meeting her added a sense of wonder and anticipation to his life. He imagined the day he might finally see her, curious about her story and ready to express the gratitude and respect he felt for the inspiration she had provided. Until then, he let the melody guide him, shaping his music, his perspective, and his heart. During this time, he also began mentoring young musicians. He encouraged them to focus on emotion and connection, rather than just technique. He shared stories of his experiences, of the mysterious melody that had changed his perspective, and of the lessons he had learned. The students were inspired not only by his skill, but by the way he had transformed through music. They learned that mastery was not just about notes, but about the heart, the feeling, and the humanity behind every performance. Through all of this, he remained deeply dedicated to his own practice. Each day he played for hours, exploring new ideas, experimenting with emotions, and letting the music flow naturally. He allowed himself to make mistakes, to improvise, and to discover unexpected beauty in imperfection. He had learned that perfection was not the goal. Authenticity and expression were. This mindset brought a sense of freedom, joy, and fulfillment that he had never experienced before. Even as he performed in grand concert halls and received praise from critics and audiences alike, he carried the memory of the melody with him. It was a reminder that greatness is not measured by skill alone, but by the depth of feeling, the connection with others, and the courage to be vulnerable. It was a lesson in humility, inspiration, and the endless possibilities that life and music could offer. He knew that this journey had changed him forever, shaping him into a musician and a human being who understood that true mastery comes from the heart, not just the hands, and so he continued his journey, both as a musician and as a person. He played not just to impress, but to share, to connect, and to explore the limitless potential of music and emotion. The mysterious melody had humbled him, challenged him, and guided him to a deeper understanding of art and life. It had shown him that the greatest lessons are often unexpected. The most profound experiences are sometimes fleeting, and the truest forms of greatness come from the courage to feel, the willingness to learn, and the humility to be transformed by something beyond oneself. One evening, as he sat near the pavilion in the park, a soft breeze carrying the smell of evening flowers, he heard the faintest sound of piano keys. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be her? He moved closer quietly, careful not to disturb whatever magic was taking place. There, in the soft glow of a lantern, was the musician he had been searching for all these weeks. She played with such ease and passion that it seemed as if the piano was a part of her body. He froze, not wanting to break the spell of the moment, and just listened, absorbing every note, every pause, every subtle nuance. When she noticed him, she smiled gently, not with surprise or fear, but with warmth and quiet acknowledgement. He approached slowly, unsure of what to say. Words felt inadequate. She continued to play, allowing the music to speak first. The melody was different this time, richer and fuller, yet still simple, yet still deeply moving. He realized then that all his attempts to replicate it had missed the point. It was not about perfection, speed, or technique. It was about presence, feeling, and allowing the music to flow naturally from one's soul. He finally spoke, his voice low and respectful, asking how she could play with such depth and feeling. She paused for a moment, her hands hovering over the keys, and then answered simply, saying that it was not about skill alone. Music was about emotion, observation, and connection. It was about understanding the story behind each note and listening, truly listening, to oneself and to the world. He listened carefully, realizing that every word carried wisdom. She did not boast or lecture. She simply shared a truth he had been seeking without even knowing it. Over the following days, they met in the park at different times, and she began to teach him in a quiet, unobtrusive way. She showed him how to slow down, to listen not just to the notes, but to the spaces between them. She taught him to feel the emotions that the music wanted to express, rather than forcing it into a structure or pattern. At first, it was challenging. He was used to control, to precision, to being the best. Now he had to let go and allow music to happen naturally. It was a humbling experience, one that tested his patience and resilience. Each lesson forced him to confront his own pride and to embrace vulnerability. She also introduced him to new perspectives. They would sit by the piano, close their eyes, and let sounds from the environment influence their playing. The rustle of leaves, distant conversations, birds singing, or the rhythm of passing cars all became part of the music. He learned to respond to the world around him, letting the environment shape his expression. This approach opened new doors for creativity, showing him that inspiration could come from anywhere, not just from formal practice or traditional compositions. The melody that had haunted him was not a challenge to conquer, but a doorway to deeper understanding. One evening, while they played together, he experienced a breakthrough. The music flowed effortlessly, yet every note was alive with feeling. He realized that he had internalized the lessons she had been teaching him. The joy of discovery, the respect for emotion, and the understanding of connection had transformed his approach completely. He no longer felt the need to impress or dominate. Instead, he wanted to share, to explore, and to feel alongside the music. It was a liberating moment, one that left him both exhilarated and peaceful. As he continued learning from her, he also began to notice changes in his own performances outside the park. Audiences were captivated in new ways. They responded not just to his technical skill, but to the emotional depth and humanity in his music. Critics remarked on a maturity and richness that had been missing before. Yet he remained humble, knowing that this growth was not solely his own achievement. It was the result of the guidance he had received, the inspiration of the melody, and the subtle influence of someone who had quietly opened a door he did not even know existed. He also started to compose new pieces, influenced by the lessons she taught him. These compositions were different from anything he had created before. They were layered with subtle emotion, with pauses that spoke as loudly as the notes themselves. The melodies carried stories of life, human connection, and the beauty of fleeting moments. Each piece became a reflection of his journey, an attempt to capture the essence of what he had learned. While they did not mimic the original melody, they carried its spirit, teaching him that inspiration could guide rather than confine him. During their lessons, she emphasized humility. She reminded him that no matter how skilled one became, there was always more to learn. Life, like music, was infinite in its depth and possibilities. The challenge was to remain open, to keep exploring, and to respect the power of inspiration and emotion. He listened closely, understanding that this humility was not weakness but a strength. It allowed him to grow, to experience, and to connect in ways he never had before. He found himself reflecting on his life, realizing how much pride had shaped his earlier approach to music. He had measured success in applause and recognition and in technical mastery. Now he understood that these external measures were not the true markers of artistry. True mastery came from feeling, understanding, and the ability to communicate emotion authentically. He began to approach every practice session and every performance with this awareness, letting the music guide him rather than controlling it. Their interactions were also a lesson in patience. She never rushed him, never pushed him beyond what he was ready for. Instead, she allowed him to discover at his own pace, to struggle, to fail, and to triumph in small moments of insight. Each breakthrough was earned, and the process itself became part of the growth. He realized that this approach could be applied to all aspects of life, teaching him patience, resilience, and respect for the pace of natural development. As weeks turned into months, he began to notice a profound change in himself. He was calmer, more attentive, and more appreciative of the subtleties in life. He could feel the emotions of others more deeply, and his relationships grew richer. Music had become a lens through which he experienced the world, heightening his awareness and sensitivity. He saw beauty in small gestures, found meaning in quiet moments, and appreciated the simple joys that had often gone unnoticed before. The lessons from the mysterious musician also inspired him to explore collaboration with other artists. He began working with dancers, painters, and poets, integrating music with other forms of expression. He discovered that when emotion and creativity were combined, the result could be powerful and transformative. The humility and openness he had learned allowed him to communicate more effectively, respect others' perspectives, and create something greater than any individual effort. The melody had taught him not just about music, but about the interconnectedness of human creativity. He also reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The initial encounter with the melody, the long nights of practice, the search in the park, all of it had shaped him profoundly. He realized that the challenge, the frustration, and the longing were as important as the eventual understanding. They had forced him to look inward, to question assumptions, and to embrace growth in a way that comfort and ease never could. The melody had humbled him, yes, but it had also illuminated a path to deeper mastery and authentic expression. During their lessons, he sometimes asked her about her life. Curious about the experiences that had shaped her musical sensibility, she shared small stories, each one a reflection of patience, observation, and connection to the world. She emphasized that music was a reflection of life, and that the depth of one's artistry depended on the depth of one's experiences, empathy, and awareness. He listened intently, absorbing not just the words but the underlying wisdom, understanding that true artistry was inseparable from life itself. Through this period, he also began sharing his insights with students and young musicians. He encouraged them to focus on emotion, presence, and connection, rather than solely on speed or technical perfection. He emphasized the importance of listening, patience, and humility. The young musicians were inspired not only by his skill, but by the authenticity and depth he had cultivated. They learned that music was not just a performance, but a conversation, an exploration, and an opportunity to connect with others on a deeper level. He began to see music as a lifelong journey rather than a destination. The melody that had humbled him was not something to be conquered, but a guide to ongoing growth and discovery. He understood that each encounter, each experience, and each note played was part of a larger process of learning, connection, and transformation. His approach to music, performance, and life had been forever changed. Finally, one evening as they played together under the lantern's soft glow, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had brought him closer to understanding himself, the world, and the true essence of music. He realized that the melody had been a gift, a teacher, and a guide, leading him to humility, empathy, and authentic expression. He no longer sought to prove his talent. He sought to connect, to share, and to explore the infinite possibilities of music and emotion. The mysterious musician had shown him that true mastery was not about being the best, but about being fully present, fully expressive, and fully human. After months of learning and growth, he returned to performing with a new sense of purpose. Every note he played carried the depth of the lessons he had learned from the mysterious musician. Audiences noticed the difference immediately. There was a warmth, an honesty, and a vulnerability in his performances that had never been there before. People felt something in the music that went beyond technical skill. It was as if he was speaking directly to their hearts, sharing a piece of his soul through every melody. Critics who once focused only on his speed and precision now spoke of the emotional resonance in his playing. They described the subtle expressions, the pauses, and the dynamic flow of his performances. They recognized a maturity and sensitivity that had transformed him from a remarkable pianist into a true artist. Yet he remained humble. He knew that this transformation was not about fame or recognition, but about the journey he had taken and the understanding he had gained from the melody that had once humbled him. He began composing new pieces, inspired by the lessons he had learned. These compositions were no longer about technical display or complex patterns. They were stories, reflections of life and human emotion, capturing moments of joy, sorrow, love, and longing. Each piece was layered with subtlety and feeling, inviting listeners to not only hear the music but to feel it within themselves. He experimented with silence, soft dynamics, and unusual phrasing, allowing the music to breathe and speak naturally. The mysterious melody's influence was present not as imitation, but as a guiding spirit that shaped his approach to creativity. He also continued to visit the park occasionally, sitting quietly at the piano under the soft lamplight. Sometimes the mysterious musician would appear and they would play together, sharing ideas and feelings through the music. Other times he was alone, letting the memory of the melody guide his fingers. These moments became a form of meditation, a way to connect with the lessons that had transformed him. The pavilion was no longer a place of longing or obsession, but a sanctuary of reflection, inspiration, and gratitude. As his music matured, he began to influence others. Young musicians sought his guidance not just for technical instruction, but for insight into emotion, expression, and connection. He shared the lessons he had learned about humility, listening, and feeling, encouraging them to explore music as a way to understand themselves and the world. He emphasized that skill was important, but true artistry came from the heart. Many of his students found new depth in their own playing, discovering that music could be a powerful way to communicate and connect with others. His travels continued, but each performance now held a new meaning. He no longer played to prove his talent. He played to share a story, an experience, and a feeling. He watched audiences respond, sometimes moved to tears, sometimes smiling quietly, and he understood that music was no longer about him alone. It was about connection, empathy, and shared humanity. Every note was a bridge between hearts, and he felt a deep sense of fulfillment in knowing that he could touch others in this way. He also became more aware of the beauty in everyday life. The lessons of the melody had taught him to notice subtle details, to appreciate the small moments, and to let inspiration come from unexpected places. The sound of rain on the roof, the laughter of children in the park, or the whisper of wind through trees all became sources of creativity. He would often incorporate these experiences into his improvisations, allowing the world around him to shape his music. This approach made his performances richer and more authentic, reflecting not just his skill but his life and experiences. One day, after a particularly moving performance, a young musician approached him and asked how he had changed so much in his playing. He smiled and said simply that he had learned to listen, not just to music but to life, to people, and to his own heart. He explained that there was a melody that had once humbled him, teaching him the importance of feeling, empathy, and patience. He encouraged the young musician to remain open to inspiration, to value emotion over perfection, and to always seek connection through music. It was a lesson that went beyond the piano, extending to life itself. As the years passed, he continued to evolve. His performances became legendary, not because of technical prowess, but because of the emotional truth in his music. He wrote compositions that were performed around the world, each one carrying the spirit of his journey and the wisdom of the melody that had changed him. Audiences connected deeply, finding pieces of their own experiences reflected in his music. Critics praised him not only as a virtuoso, but as an artist with a profound understanding of human emotion and expression. He also discovered a new joy in collaboration. Working with dancers, poets, and other musicians, he explored ways to combine music with other art forms, creating experiences that engaged multiple senses and emotions. These collaborations were inspired by the lessons he had learned in the park: openness, listening, patience, and connection. He found that the best creations came not from control or domination, but from respect for the process, the partners, and the shared story that emerged through collaboration. Despite his fame and success, he remained humble and grounded. The melody that had once humbled him served as a constant reminder that no matter how skilled or accomplished he became, there was always more to learn. Life and music were infinite, full of surprises, challenges, and lessons. He approached each day with curiosity, gratitude, and a willingness to grow, understanding that mastery was not a destination but a lifelong journey. He also took time to reflect on the nature of talent and inspiration. He realized that true greatness was not about recognition or accolades, but about the ability to touch hearts, to inspire, and to convey truth through art. He thought about the mysterious musician and the gift she had given him, not just the melody, but the insight, the humility and the perspective that had reshaped his life. He understood that inspiration often comes from unexpected sources, and that those who influence us profoundly may remain unseen or unknown. One evening, he returned to the pavilion where it had all begun. The city lights glimmered in the distance and the air was calm. He sat at the piano, letting his fingers move freely over the keys. The music flowed naturally, carrying the lessons of patience, empathy, and presence. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey, the challenges, and the growth that had transformed him. The pavilion no longer held mystery or longing, but peace, understanding, and fulfillment. The melody that had once humbled him was now a part of him, guiding every note and every expression. He continued to perform around the world, but his approach was never the same as before. He no longer chased applause or acclaim. Instead, he played to connect, to share, and to explore the depth of human experience. Audiences were captivated, not just by his skill, but by the emotional honesty and vulnerability that flowed through every performance. Critics recognized a new level of artistry, praising the maturity, depth, and emotional richness in his music. Yet he never sought recognition. His joy came from the music itself, the connection it created and the growth it fostered within him. He also found joy in teaching and mentoring others. He shared the lessons he had learned from the mysterious melody, the importance of listening, feeling, patience, humility, and connection. He encouraged young musicians to explore music as a way to understand themselves and the world, rather than simply as a means of technical achievement. Many of his students discovered a new depth in their own playing, and some went on to become artists who valued emotional expression and connection over skill alone. Through this, he realized that the gift of the melody had been multiplied, spreading its influence through the lives of others. As time passed, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From a prodigious young pianist, confident in his skill, to a humbled and transformed artist, he had learned that true mastery was not about technical perfection, but about depth, empathy, and authenticity. The mysterious melody had challenged him, inspired him, and guided him to a richer understanding of music and life. It had taught him that the greatest lessons often come unexpectedly, and that humility, openness, and presence are essential for growth. He continued to play with passion, curiosity, and gratitude. Each performance was a celebration of his journey, a reflection of the lessons he had learned and a bridge between himself and his audience. He knew that music was not just an art form, but a way to connect with the world, to share emotion, and to touch hearts. The melody that had once humbled him was now a guiding force, reminding him of the beauty of vulnerability, the power of empathy, and the endless possibilities of expression. In the end, he understood that being the most talented pianist was never about being the fastest, most precise, or most famous. It was about understanding, feeling, and sharing. It was about listening to the world, to others, and to oneself. The mysterious melody had shown him that true greatness comes from the heart, and that humility, openness, and emotional honesty are the keys to mastery. He played not to impress, but to connect, to explore, and to celebrate the depth and beauty of life through music.